By 1943, the Second World War was in full swing, with Germany already holding vast territory throughout Europe. However, despite such a large territorial advantage, multiple events would soon begin to arise that would spark the beginning of the end for the Nazi war machine. The first of these events would occur on the Eastern Front. In November of 1942, Soviet forces launched a massive counter-offensive on the strategically important city of Stalingrad, encircling the entire German Sixth Army, which consisted of more than 220,000 troops. After months of nearly endless combat, the Sixth Army would be reduced down to 91,000 soldiers, who would be forced to surrender, making it the first major defeat for Germany and sparking an endless Soviet campaign that would quickly drive the Germans back into their own territory. In the West, an Allied victory in North Africa now allowed for an invasion of Italy, which resulted in the defeat of Mussolini's government. However, Germany would continue to fight on, taking over the fight in Italy's absence. However, despite being locked in heavy combat, there is one story that proves not everything in war has to be about death and destruction. At the end of 1943, a planned bombing run by Allied forces on the Focke-Wulf 190 aircraft production facility in Bremen, undertaken by the men of the 527th Bombardment Squadron, would be put into motion. One of these men, Charlie Brown, would be undertaking his very first command of a B-17 flying fortress named the Old Pub. He would soon become an instrumental figure in the events that would come, with his story coming to be one of the most inspirational stories of the war. On the 20th of December 1943, the operation was launched. Brown's bomber would be occupying the highly dangerous left side of the formation, known as the Purple Heart Corner, made dangerous by the fact that German fighters preferred to attack the enemy's flanks rather than attack straight up the middle. It wasn't long into the battle when many of the other bombers went down after being struck by heavy flak fire. Brown's bomber was then also hit in its left wing and was forced out of formation, but it wasn't long until a detachment of about 8 enemy fighter craft gave chase. Despite being able to hold out and fight off many of the incoming fighters, Brown's bomber would still be torn apart by enemy fire, causing it to plummet down towards the earth. However, Brown was able to regain some of his altitude just as German fighter pilot Franz Stigler was refueling. Stigler was a veteran pilot and had seen combat missions in nearly every theatre of the war, so much so that he was only one bomber kill away from receiving the high honour of the Knight's Cross. However, it was his next decision that could only be described as one of sheer luck on Brown's part in the face of near certain death. Upon spotting the bomber, Stigler quickly flew up behind it. He observed the aircraft, realizing that its tail gunner was not raising up to fire. He then took notice of the severe damage caused by the other German fighters it had encountered mere moments ago. He then decided that the majority of the crew must be either dead or severely injured, and he took a risk, flying alongside the craft despite the fact it could return fire at any moment. It was then that he made direct eye contact with Brown, who at this point was heavily wounded with his brain dangerously deprived of oxygen. Stigler signalled for Brown to land, but he refused. It was clear that all he wanted was to get back to England. He had every opportunity to blow Brown out of the sky, and yet instead he decided to escort Brown back over open waters and across the Channel, with no idea what sort of Allied air defences could be waiting for him. He did not fly the entire length of the Channel, however, making the wise decision to turn back before reaching England, but not before saluting Brown. 40 years later, Brown reached out in an attempt to find Franz. He was successful, and the two became great friends, marking the end to one of the most unique and truly touching moments of the Second World War.